welcome to another edition of the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us today on a Tuesday. Sitting in here, as always, with producer extraordinaire Pete Melfi, also host of the Bargain Hunters Radio Hour, at least host for the time being until they find somebody better. Anyway, glad you're with us today, no matter where you are. If you're not listening to us on ESPN 1420 St. Augustine Sports Leader, we can be heard via the Listen Live links on thesocialgambler.com or 1420sports.com. You can also check us out via the TuneIn Radio app. So no excuse not to be tuning in here to the Social Gambler Radio Hour. If you'd like to join the program and you live here locally in St. Augustine, 794-9001 is how you do that. 794-9001. We are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com, your leader in free sports picks, news, and reviews. Plenty of fresh content up on the Social Gambler today, as usual. Might get to some of it here in a little bit. Lots to talk about today. A lot of news out there, busy day. What I'd like to start with is a big trade in Major League Baseball last night. Ichiro Suzuki, a surefire future Hall of Famer, 10-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glove winner, fixture for the Seattle Mariners ever since he came over in 2001 as a 27-year-old. Ichiro has been a great player, 322 career hitter. He's 38 years old now. He has faded, only hitting .261 this year, and he has now joined the New York Yankees. And, you know, maybe there was a need there. Certainly, Yankees lost Brett Gardner, their regular left fielder, early in the year to injuries. They've been platooning Andrew Jones and Raul Ibanez in left. Of course, Ichiro has always been a right fielder. But Nick Swisher, though he's currently injured, he didn't play last night. Nick Swisher is the Yankees' right fielder. So we just learned in the last few hours that the Yankees actually had Ichiro sign a list of demands or conditions before they agreed to trade for him. Among those, Ichiro had to agree to switch positions, to hit at the bottom of the lineup. Of course, Ichiro was hitting leadoff over there for Seattle, and to possibly sit out against left-handed pitchers. So even though the Yankees didn't give up much, a couple of 25-year-old AA pitchers, still apparently Ichiro wanted them more than they wanted him. Ichiro did request this trade. Yankees have the best record in baseball. You know, really, to me, this move is somewhat gross and sort of sums up why I think baseball has lost its way over the last couple of decades. You know, the way it's currently structured with no salary cap, you have teams like the Yankees and the Red Sox who are able to, you know, it's not only them, the Angels, Texas Rangers, any big market team that's really able to spend a lot of money. Los Angeles Dodgers are certainly about to spend a whole lot of money over the next couple of years on that roster after that new ownership group headed by Magic Johnson sort of swept in and bought the team a few months ago. They will be spending. But the big market teams really pick and choose their roster. They sort of build all-star rosters. And it takes away from, you know, it takes away from how special it is to be a member of the New York Yankees, quite frankly. Ichiro is a two-month rental. You know, the Yankees are not going to sign him next year. Nobody thinks they are. His contract's running up at the end of this season, so they've rented a guy who has spent his entire Major League career in one city, Seattle, has built sort of a Hall of Fame legendary career over there, and now he'll be coming in over the hill, contribute what he can contribute to the Yankees. Not the first time this happened. The Yankees have a long history of it. I mean, they won World Series with guys like Darryl Strawberry, Cecil Fielder, who were past their primes and sort of had made their names with other teams. And the Yankees frequently overpay for these guys, and it doesn't matter because their pockets are so deep. If it doesn't work, they just go throw more money at the next guy the next year. So, Yanks will have Ichiro for the remainder of this season. Yankees currently 58-38. That is the best record in the majors. 7 games ahead of Baltimore in the AL East. So the rich get a little richer. The Mariners farm system picks up a couple of pitchers. And the only people who are probably truly unhappy about the deal are Andrew Jones and Raul Ibanez, because now, instead of platooning in left field, those guys are going to be a platooning designated hitter. Ichiro made his debut in a Yankee uniform last night against the Seattle Mariners in Safeco Field, where Ichiro's had so many great moments. Yankees won 4-1. Ichiro batted eighth, went 1 for 4, hit a single in his first at bat. Also stole a base, his 16th stolen base of the year. Ichiro still does get around well. I mean, he's 38 now, but 16 stolen bases this year. He'll add something. He'll definitely add something in terms of defense, because the Yankees were lacking Andrew Jones, Ibanez. Neither one of them are known as being great defenders. Ichiro, again, a 10-time Gold Glove winner. Might be a little past his prime. Still excellent out in the field. Good base runner. But, 261 this year. Never been a guy who hit for power. Was really unique, in his prime. Used to love to watch Ichiro hit. He sort of did it differently than anybody else in the majors. You could tell that in an era where everybody seemed to be, swinging for the fences, got guys like Brady Anderson hitting 40 home runs. You could tell that was never Ichiro. That was never what he was interested in. Almost like you can see from watching him play that he has a real understanding of the game of baseball. I bet he would be, even though he can't speak English, so you better speak Japanese if you're going to talk to him, but I bet he'd be very interesting to sit down with and have a long conversation with about the game of baseball. Anyhow, he is a 2-month rental now with the New York Yankees. I'm sure they'll cast him aside at the end of the season and spend their money on another big-name guy who may or may not be past his prime. Other news today that might be of more interest to people in this area: Justin Blackmon, Jaguars' first-round pick, picked him 5th overall in April's draft. Really expected, or a lot of people really hope, he's going to have an instant impact on a passing game that was worse in the league last year. He officially pleaded guilty today to DUI in an Oklahoma courtroom. Now, he cut this plea to avoid jail time. What he got sounds like a slap on the wrist to me. I mean, I've never had a DUI. I'm no expert in DUI proceedings, but for your second DUI, a $500 fine and 50 hours of community service, that sounds like a good job by the lawyer to me. Anyhow, that is his punishment. Remains to be seen whether he'll be disciplined by the NFL. Of course, Roger Goodell can't pass down any discipline yet because Blackmon isn't even signed. One of 5 first-rounders now that the Browns have come to terms with Trent Richardson and Brandon Whedon. Blackmon is one of 5 first-rounders to remain unsigned. Of course, training camp here in Jacksonville does start on Thursday, day after tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be getting word in the next day or two that Justin Blackmon has signed and he'll be on the field right from the get-go. Because the Jags, it's no secret, they needed serious help on the offensive side of the ball. And Justin Blackmon was supposed to be that help. If he's not going to be out there, and if your best player, really the only guy who's made things happen on offense for the last couple of years, Maurice Jones-Drew, apparently he's not going to be out there. Who knows how long that situation's going to last? Mike Mularkey said publicly today he hasn't spoken to Maurice Jones-Drew since the Jags offseason program began and has no idea if or when Jones-Drew will report. All indications are he will not report anytime soon. And it's a shame. I just, listen. I don't understand. I'm going to lay out the case one more time because I've argued it with a lot of people. A lot of people seem to be on the other side here. Okay, from the Jaguars' perspective, you have a guy who led the NFL in rushing last year, despite a passing game that was worse in the league, so everybody knew he was getting the ball. Guy who had almost no help around him, led the league in rushing, still in his physical prime, 27 years old, has improved every year since he's been in the league, is going to stay, still going to be at his physical peak for the next couple of years. Again, this guy's only 27. This is not a guy who's 29 or 31. He has played 3 years under a contract. That, yes, no question about it, there was more money on the front end of that contract than the back end. Still, when you average the entire contract, he'd be making about $6 million a year. Less than many guys who Jones-Drew has proven he's better than. I'm not even talking about the Adrian Petersons, Chris Johnsons of the world, because it's less than half of what those guys make. I mean, Jones-Drew, he's making less than the D'Angelo Williams of the world, the LaShawn McCoys of the world, the Matt Fortes of the world. And he's done more with less help than these guys have. Okay, so he's played for 3 years under that contract. These last 2 years of the contract, he's only due $4.5 million a year. A third of what Adrian Peterson and Chris Johnson will be making. Half of what those other guys will be making. Again, those other guys that Jones-Drew is better than. Now, I understand the desire from the Jaguars' perspective to sort of rub their hands together and say, hey, we really pulled a shrewd deal here. We've got this guy who's the best running back in the league playing for $4.5 million a year. The next couple of years, aren't we smart? Pat ourselves on the back. I get that. But should the priority be saving a little money here and there when you're dealing with an offense that is the worst in the league, a team that has ticket sales issues, a team that has marketability issues, visibility issues, and you're talking about your most marketable and visible guy? A team that is bringing in, is throwing around money this offseason. You know, Laurent Robinson is going to be making more than Maurice Jones-Drew this coming season. I mean, put yourself in Maurice Jones-Drew's shoes. You're bringing in a free agent wide receiver who's on his 5th NFL team, never been better than a 3 wide receiver at any place he's been. I mean, I got news for you. If you're the second coming, you know, if you're the next Jerry Rice or poor man's Jerry Rice, 4 or 5 teams don't let you go. So, listen, I get that Laurent Robinson made some things happen last year when he got a chance with the Dallas Cowboys due to some injuries. But you're giving him more money than Maurice Jones-Drew, and you still have plenty of cap space left. I mean, you could pay Maurice Jones-Drew. What's the problem here? You could renegotiate that deal. Okay, sign him to a new 4-year deal now. Pay him his market value these next couple of years. I bet you he's not even asking for what Adrian Peterson, Chris Johnson get, even though he's proven to be the player that those guys are. But, you know and I know Maurice Jones-Drew knows that in 2 years, when he's 29 instead of 27, he's going to have very little leverage, because a lot of people are going to say, well, you're about to enter the downside. So pay him now, give him a 4-year deal. Contracts are not guaranteed anyway. If the Jaguars want to cut him after 2 years, point is they could pay him what he's worth for these next 2 seasons, and then they could cut him. It's not like the NBA where they'd, be crippled by some long-term deal to a guy who's over the hill. They can cut him at any time. Not owe him the rest of what's on the deal. And that's the business of the NFL. And so I don't understand why people say, oh, Maurice Jones-Drew needs to shut his mouth and get into camp. If you're Maurice Jones-Drew, wait a second. You got a new owner talking about he's going to spend to the cap, throwing all this money around, bringing in some offensive players as free agents that they haven't sweat one drop for this team. Maurice Jones-Drew's been breaking his back here, wasted the prime years of his career on a bad football team. He's still in the prime of his career. Pay the man. Anyway, I'm not going to make that case every day, but I've made it a couple times here on the air, and it seems to fall on deaf ears because all kinds of people, friends of mine, people seem to take the other side on that. Say, oh, well, he signed the contract. Well, the team's not obligated to pay him. It doesn't work the same way it does, at your job and my job or whatever. We sign a contract with our employer fires us. We're either entitled to the severance package that was in that contract. If they try not to pay us anything, we got a court case on our hands. But there's collective bargaining in the NFL, which they've ruled owners are allowed to do that. So contracts, all they really are is 1-year contracts. Anyway, training camp set to open Thursday, and Maurice Jones-Drew likely will not be in attendance. Now, something that caught my eye that I'm sure would be interesting to some of you listening right now, you might have seen it this morning. It was in the St. Augustine Record, also in the Florida Times-Union. But the Jags have announced they're going to be official participants in St. Augustine's 450th commemoration, which isn't until 2015. But if you live here in the St. Augustine area, the preparations, the build-up is already starting. This is going to be a huge event. Now, I'm really not sure what the Jaguars participating, what that'll entail. I'm sure they'll be at a variety of functions promoting the event. Team President Mark Lamping said quote, we're going to use our promotional tools to make the event as successful as it can be. Says we have many fans in the area, and he's right. A lot of Jaguar fans here in the St. Augustine area, obviously. But either way, even if the teams roll, and they have some selfish motives, sure, they want to build interest. They want to get a couple more people from here in St. Augustine buying tickets, making that 45-minute or hour-long trek up to the stadium on Sundays. But anyway, you slice it out, this is a good thing. I like what Shad Khan and Mark Lamping are doing here. It's a good thing if you enjoy NFL football in this area and want it to be here for a long time, because the Jags need to somewhat regionalize their fan base. Orlando should be full of Jaguar fans, and it's not. Is Daytona full of Jaguar fans? I know if Savannah, for example, is in the local Jaguars, the TV viewing area, so they get Jaguar games whether they like it or not. I have a feeling a lot of them don't like it. But Savannah's in the local market. Are there a lot of Jaguar fans in Savannah? I don't think so. My point is this whole northeast Florida, southeast Georgia little part of the world, needs to become a Jaguar part of the world if this franchise is going to have a foothold here for the long term. And I think Shad Khan and Mark Lamping smartly recognize that, and they're actually taking steps to see that it happens. So again, St. Augustine's 450th commemoration in 2015. Jacksonville Jaguars will be a part of that, an official part of that. St. Augustine Mayor Joe Bowles. Don't know anything about Joe Bowles. Pete, Joe Bowles, give me the rundown.
He's good enough, dude. He's a friend of the family, so I'm not going to say anything bad about him. I've never heard anything bad about him.
Republican, Democrat, do you know?
I don't know.
You do not know?
I have no idea.
Yeah, okay, here's Pete Melfi.
I would assume Republican.
Pete, we want age.
Me, 28.
Yes. 28-year-old, lifelong St. Augustine resident, Pete Melfi, has no idea whether St. Augustine Mayor Joe Bowles, what his political affiliation is. Folks, I am right with Pete. I'm not using him as an example. I'm a couple years older than Pete. I'm right there. I've never voted in a presidential election. I always call myself the silent majority. I am the silent majority. And if you want to know why, does it really matter? And I know Pete probably shares my opinion, whether Joe Bowles is a Democrat or Republican. I think everybody's pretty much watered down enough now with politics, whether it's at a local level or national level, where we think that Joe Bowles probably isn't running the city anyway. Probably business interests that go far beyond, way over Pete and I's head. Just like business interests that go way above the average American's head. I'm sure run Washington. Doesn't matter whether there's an Obama in office, a Bush in office, a Romney in office. Frankly, I don't really care.
They're all the same, right?
I'm telling you. And I know they're not the same. I know somebody's listening to this right now saying, that is ignorance. But I don't know. How much has changed in our daily lives, aside from the economy continuing down the path that it started down under the previous administration? I don't know. I'm not going to get cynical here, and thank God this isn't politics. We like to talk sports here, which I actually am interested in. Now, if there were a vote for general manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would vote and rally for that. Mayor of St. Augustine, Joe Bowles, if you're listening, you're welcome to come on this show. Talk all about your political affiliation. Hopefully you're in favor of the new casino that is apparently going to be built in this area. Isn't that what Mousy said last week?
He said somebody was trying, weren't they?
Yeah, casino.
They were rallying for it.
Well, I tell you what, some of the healthiest business in this area is... There's Best Bet poker rooms. I know the one here in St. Johns County is sort of dying, but I was up at Regency, and it's not going to go out of business. Apparently the ownership doesn't care that it's dying, because all that's happened is the Best Bet Regency, Best Bet Jacksonville, has pulled some of that business away. Well, the same people own all three of them. Jacksonville, Orange Park, and St. Augustine, so they're all making the money eventually anyway. And by the way, warning, at that St. Augustine poker room now, the dealers, the Best Bet dealers who work at all three places are now allowed to play at the Bayard location here in St. Johns County. So, I don't know, you would think dealers would be sharper than the regular guy on the poker table. I've actually heard, though, the dealers struggle playing poker. You hear that they're not as good as you would think. Who knows? Just a warning, though, it might not be a table full of rookies if you go down there and plop your $100 down at the 1-2 table up at the Best Bet poker room. Probably shouldn't even be giving them a shout-out. They don't spend any money here, do they, Pete?
How did you even get off on this tangent anyway? Where did this come from?
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Where did it start?
Politics, Joe Bowles. I'll tell you where it starts. See, here's what I can do as a radio professional. I can take things and weave them back, all the way into where we started. St. Augustine Mayor Joe Bowles, who 28-year-old lifelong St. Augustine resident Pete Melfi has no idea what his political affiliation is, even though he's apparently friends with Pete's family. Pete says he thinks he's a good dude, which probably means he doesn't wear a tie. But Joe Bowles has proclaimed the Jacksonville Jaguars are, quote, an official ally of St. Augustine, Florida. For what that's worth, that is now the case. We are going to go to a break. 794-9001, the number if you want to get back on the other side. I'm John Arnette, and this is the Social Gambler Radio Hour. Nothing. Welcome back to the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I am John Arnette. Good to have you with us today. If you'd like to join the show, your calls are always welcome. 794-9001. That's how you reach us here at the station. 794-9001. We are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com, your leader in free sports picks, news, and reviews. Loads of fresh content up on the Social Gambler today. European sports, American sports, Olympic soccer, Olympic basketball, Major League Baseball. It's all covered in the Social Gambler. News, information, picks. They also have, an Irish poker pro just got finished playing the World Series of Poker. His name is Ross Johnson. He's a regular contributor to the Social Gambler. I see today he put up his latest blog installment talking about his time out in Vegas. He rented a house out there with a few other poker pros. I was reading this. I mean, this just sounds like a dream life. I'm sorry, hey, I love my life too. But, this guy who's a poker pro, young guy, like a lot of these pros are. If you've watched any of it on TV, about half of these guys playing for hundreds of thousands of dollars are in their 20s. Who knows why that is? Maybe a lot of it has to do with those guys don't have permanent careers yet, so they can go off and really try something like that, whereas older guys with families and you have more to sort of worry about. Maybe it has to do with maybe the fearlessness of youth sort of helps them at the poker table. Being able to fire out that bet or make that call, even if there's a lot of money involved, who knows? But for whatever reason, it's been a really young wave of young poker players here since the poker explosion a few years ago when ESPN started televising it. Anyway, reading this guy Ross Johnson's blog on the Social Gambler, he went over. He's from Ireland, went over to Vegas. The World Series is a whole month of tournaments. The main event is just the last tournament. There's a bunch of World Series events. Anyway, went over, I don't know how long, a month or two, staying in a rented house with a group of his friends. All they have to do every day is quote-unquote work, a.k.a. play poker. That's living, man. Sounds like it to me. Plenty of trouble to be getting into in Vegas. I'm sure they'll have some stories last them the rest of their lives. Some good, some maybe not so good. I don't know. Anyway, you can check out Ross Johnson's poker blog on the Social Gambler and all sports news, sports gambling news, gambling technology news, gambling industry news. It can all be found at thesocialgambler.com. Now, wanted to get into some college football. We talked last week pretty extensively about the SEC, as SEC Media Days were last week in Birmingham, and the ACC Media Days have now wrapped up. Before we do get into that, a couple of things I want to say on ACC Media Days. There was something, sort of an NFL-related story that caught my eye, and it's the type of thing a lot of times I would throw in at the end of the show, but sometimes we run out of time. I get to rambling, Pete drops the ball, letting me know when the show's ending, So anyway, I wanted to make sure to mention this because this is curious to me. Now, we all know who Ricky Williams is. Ricky Williams, former Heisman Trophy winner, University of Texas. Mike Ditka traded away his entire draft when Ditka was head coach of the New Orleans Saints to draft Williams. Had some great years in the NFL. Maybe his best seasons were with Miami the first time around. Also had a second act with Miami. After he was, it's a bizarre story, the Ricky Williams story. Was out of the NFL for a couple years, played in Canada. Sort of a weird guy into holistic healing. got himself in trouble with, very outspoken about his, marijuana use before games, before practices, things of that nature. That got him on Roger Goodell's sort of bad side. There was a fascinating documentary about Ricky Williams. I mean, the guy is just a bizarre guy. One of those 30 for 30 ESPN documentaries. Don't know if you've seen those. You probably have. They've been coming on periodically for the last year, and several of them I've seen have been interesting. But this one on Ricky Williams, called Run Ricky Run, I believe it's done by the same guy who broke this Saints bounty case, Sean Panthelon. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think he's the one who directed this Ricky Williams documentary. Well, ever since I saw that, that's really sort of illuminated, just how strange Ricky Williams is. I mean, this is a guy who, he's not just different, he walks the walk. He's actually a different individual. Well, he has a foundation, the Ricky Williams Foundation, that was created while he was playing football, while he was in the NFL. He's been out of the NFL, for a year now? Anyway, he thought he was getting a $32 million grant for his foundation. The express purpose of his foundation was to help youth, impoverished youth. Certainly a noble cause. And anyway, he had been given a $32 million donation by some California hedge fund. Apparently, a California hedge fund. I thought hedge funds were designed to make money. I do not know how investing $32 million in Ricky Williams Foundation would make money, but I'm no hedge fund expert. I'm sure there's a logical answer to that. But anyway, that funding was withdrawn and withheld. And there's a very interesting article in the Austin, Texas paper, the Austin Chronicle, about it. Of course, Ricky Williams played his college football in Austin, Texas, won a Heisman there at University of Texas. And anyway, the reason this money is withheld and what Ricky Williams charity has turned into is sort of a conduit to teach something called access consciousness to underprivileged youths. Now, access consciousness is something that was sort of created by someone named Gary Douglas. And believers they're called accessories. They're not called members or believers. They're called accessories of access consciousness, which now includes Ricky Williams, former NFL running back. They believe they can heal the wounded with their bare hands, they can teach others how to read minds, and they can speak with molecules outside of their own bodies. That's just for starters. Not surprisingly, some have called this a cult. And some are a little disturbed that Ricky Williams will be using tens of millions of dollars to indoctrinate impoverished youth with these ideas. Now, this guy, Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Movement, now, this guy's not just scraping by here. He live streams his events. Okay, so that's what it is. When I guess what most people know as sermons, he deems them events. He live streams his events to accessories, again, members or followers all over the world, for about $1,200 a pop. So if you want to get one of his events on tape, $1,200 a pop. And where this, you think, teach his own and whatever, keep an open mind. But when you start this language, some of the language they use, now through Ricky Williams Charity Foundation, this access consciousness is being, quote, performed on children. Children aren't being exposed to this, or children aren't being taught this. This is being performed on them. So, listen, I've never obviously seen one of Gary Douglas's presentations, whatever he calls them, an event. But from what it sounds like, it sounds awful close to hypnosis. Hypnosis that you pay a pretty penny for. And that Ricky Williams is now using the considerable amount of money in the coffers of his foundation to indoctrinate youth to perform access consciousness on impoverished youth. And remember, these are kids, apparently he's seeking out kids from disadvantaged backgrounds. Kids that might not have the parental structure to tell them, this is crazy. You can't speak with a molecule on a table. And hey, maybe I'm the ignorant one here. Maybe I'm saying, what do you mean read minds, speak with molecules? Maybe I just haven't progressed that far in my human experience But from where I sit right now in this little broom closet in St. Augustine, that sounds like wacko stuff. Way out there. And so, Ricky Williams, I know he spends most of his time in California. Shocker. So if in 5, 10, 20 years, there's a whole sort of segment of underprivileged California people who believe in some really far-out strange things, they sit around on the street corners thinking, if I could just arrange the molecules properly, maybe someone will drop some pennies into my pan. You could probably have Ricky Williams Foundation to thank for that, I don't even know if that interests most of you there that little bit, but it interested me. Maybe it's just because I've seen that documentary on Ricky Williams, but anyway, I wanted to get that out there. Ricky Williams Foundation, now devoted to performing access consciousness on children, teaching children to read minds, speak with molecules, heal people with their bare hands. I wonder if it ever occurred to Ricky Williams that, hey, maybe the fact that I was bigger and faster than everybody, maybe that's why I was able to have all that success. Because, and there's another part I found amusing. It's similar to the Scientology, sort of, when you hear these things, but apparently, this guy, the founder of Access Consciousness, Gary Douglas, anyway, apparently he met Ricky Williams, and together, I'm reading this together, Douglas and Williams concluded that Williams, although never indoctrinated directly, was indeed unknowingly practicing access consciousness. You're a natural, man. The same guy who sold, Tom Cruise knows on Scientology. Oh, you've already, it's already been decided. You're better than the rest of these people. I won't get into Scientology, but I know part of their belief structure sort of entails that people who have success monetarily and as far as success fame-wise, people who have success in society, are somehow a higher plane of people and be treated as such in the afterlife. That's not a joke, by the way. That's sort of part of the general Scientology. But see, Pete, politics in the last segment, religion in this segment, on fire today here at the Social Gambler Radio Hour. Access consciousness, Pete. Try that on for size. Next to Ashley Madison, I know that is going to become your new favorite subject here on the show. And if you combine the two, if you perform access consciousness on women you meet through Ashley Madison, you might be able to come some sort of weird local Yoda who's able to wear, silk robes and sort of, wax all your body hair.
Yeah, as appealing as that sounds, I think I'll pass on that.
Well, I'm telling you.
I don't know if I could see myself in the robe, man. Not that I don't think the robe and not waxing the body here.
Silk, velvet. No, well, wait a second.
Oh,
wait a second. If you take a certain step, now you know me. I'm no body hair waxer, but I also don't have a trove of women that I perform access consciousness on.
Right. Yeah.
Move around their molecules and read their minds.
I thought that's how you got the job here. Didn't you perform access? Aren't you one of those higher beings that's just you're successful?
That's how I lured in my wife, and it's only now that she's coming around to the reality. But it's too late now. We've salvaged her with a kid and another one on the way, so she's in it for the long haul. Ain't that right, honey? Anyway, think about that. Access consciousness combined with Ashley Madison equals a different plane of womanizing. I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, we're going to go to a break now. When we get back, I promise we will get back to sports. 794-9001 if you'd like to get in with your thoughts on some of these matters. I'm John Arnette, and this is the Social Gambler Radio Hour. Welcome back. We are back here. More of the Social Gambler Radio Hour. We just got great ideas flying around the room here during the break. Oh, to be a fly on the wall. Maybe you could stick a camera here in the room and put us on cable television like Dan Patrick. Right? That could work, yeah?
Just as entertaining.
Exactly. Equally as entertaining.
Even without segments.
I was going to make a joke right there. When you hear me pause like that, sometimes, folks, I pull some punches here on the air, and I need to. Some of the things I say tend to trend towards inappropriate sometimes. And just had a classic thought there when I talked about the Dan Patrick show that I believe would have elicited some laughs. I would have certainly laughed at myself, but might have been the last Social Gambler Radio Hour here, so I decided to pull that punch, so we're going to move on to something else. Just so you know, it's in there. Someday, we'll meet up, watch a ball game or something, and I'll give you the unedited Social Gambler Radio Hour. Now, if you would like to see video podcasts of this show, they are available every day on thesocialgambler.com, complete with some slick editing. The guys up there at The Social Gambler who chop up and edit this video make me look better than I am, and I appreciate the compliment on the haircut, guys. The latest and the greatest in fashion. Paid $450, had some guy in tight jeans, spent about 7 hours stressing over this business. Anyway, I am John Arnette. This is the Social Gambler Radio Hour. Good to have you with us. 794-9001. The number if you'd like to join the program today. ACC Media Days started on Sunday. They wrapped up yesterday. 89 assembled media members, less than half of what SEC Media Days drew. Of course, the SEC now, that seems normal, but remember back in the early 90s when Florida State was actually offered a chance to join the SEC, turned it down to stay in the ACC, or to join the ACC. At that time, the ACC was sort of trying to compete with the SEC as football equals. A lot of people thought when the ACC raided the Big East for some of their football powers, teams like Virginia Tech, Miami, Boston College, a lot of people thought that would make the ACC a sort of rival to the SEC. Just hasn't materialized. Aside from the Big East, the ACC has been consistently the worst of the so-called automatic qualifier conferences, even though I understand in 2014 that automatic qualifier stuff is going away. But still a good media contingent on hand for ACC Media Days. Florida State, an overwhelming choice to win the ACC championship. Media voting 60 votes going to Florida State. Next closest Virginia Tech with 18, then Clemson at 13. Even more overwhelming for Florida State to win the Atlantic, 72. They received 72 votes to win the Atlantic Division. Clemson second with 17. Now, I've said this before. I guess I am. Am I missing something here? Someone please tell me what I'm missing. Because Florida State was 9-4 last year. It's been forever since they had a season with fewer than 4 losses. I mean, they're just a sort of an also-ran in the ACC. And we're not talking about for the last year or two. We're talking about, it's been 7 years. 7 years since they've won the ACC. That's a long time. That's many recruiting classes come and gone. 7 years. And hey, every year the build-up is the same. The off-season hype. Every year it's, hey, this is the year. They're going to be good this year. Last year was supposed to be the year. Guess what? The media also picked them to win the ACC last year. So par for the course here this year. It's almost like people forget what they see on the field after a couple of months. It's almost like after a couple of months of not watching football, people just go back to sort of the old reputation they have in their head from the late 90s. And, Florida State and Doak and those uniforms, I guess. Because aside from their uniforms and maybe this year the defensive line, which is going to be strong, not much else resembles those glory days Florida State teams. This team is not prolific on offense and hasn't been since Jimbo Fisher's been head coach. They struggle in the secondary, which really costs them. I mean, everybody thinks they're going to win the Atlantic Division over Clemson, and they might, because it's not like I think Clemson's going to run through the season undefeated. They'll have a couple of conference losses themselves, but Clemson beat Florida State handily last year. And you say Florida State has players back? I got news for you. Clemson's got their best players back as well. Guys like quarterback Taj Boyd, Sammy Watkins, who was named the preseason ACC Player of the Year by the media. That Clemson offense, that up-tempo, spread you out, throw the ball all over the field offense, that hadn't gone anywhere. And Florida State had a mighty time, had real trouble defending it last year. I don't see how that problem's going to be corrected. I don't see how the problems on offense are going to be corrected. This offense was dreadful last year. Absolutely terrible. Just look at the end of the year. Forget the games that E.J. Manuel missed. Leave those out. I understand a lot of the year they play with a backup quarterback. Fine. What about at the end of the year when E.J. Manuel was back? How about in the Florida game? How about the Notre Dame game? That offense, is that going to be is that what we're basing favorites in the ACC, potential top 10 in the country this year? That's what we're basing that on? Keep in mind, Jimbo Fisher has had full control of this offense for, 6 years now? So it's not like the guys are just catching on to the system. It's the only system any of these guys on offense have ever known. And I always hear people throw, returning players. They have 18 returning players. That's only good if your returning players are up and coming or already really good. All right, if Ole Miss has 20 returning starters from last year's squad, that's not necessarily a good thing. You understand? Now, of course, Florida State is not at that level. They're certainly better than Ole Miss. 9-4 last year. But 9-4 is what they were. It's not like they should have been better than that. They were a 9-4 type team. Lost to a very average Virginia team in an important game. A game, there's nothing fluky about it. But once again this offseason, people just have put all that out of their mind, predicting Florida State to be a contender for the national title, favorite in the ACC. We'll see about that. Florida State, from where I'm sitting, Virginia Tech and Clemson, I'd be more surprised if Florida State won the ACC than either one of those teams. And I'd say it's a team that people have slept on in the ACC for a couple of years now, but Paul Johnson has built quite a squad at Georgia Tech. And people might not like it. It might not be fun to watch. And they might have a definite ceiling just due to the type of offense they run. They run that triple option offense. But it is effective. And, they get in trouble and they turn the ball over, but they've got a lot of guys back too. I look for Georgia Tech to make some noise in the ACC Coastal this year. Now, one team that has some fans in this area who is not expected to be any good at all is the Miami Hurricanes. Miami picked to finish 5th in the Coastal by the media. That's behind Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Virginia, ahead of only Duke. So Al Golden, these are tough times for Al Golden. Rumors swirling of the fresh NCAA violations. Who knows how that's going to play out? Who knows if this is a program that's going to be on probation in 2-3 years? And the product out on the field this year, I know a lot of Hurricane fans sort of bracing themselves with that, but I think in their heart of hearts, most Miami fans still probably feel like, they'll scrape out a bowl game this year, 7-5, something like that. Not if they're finishing 5th in the Coastal Division, they won't. Of course, again, this is only the media's opinion. What do they know? If they're picking Florida State to win the ACC championship by a wide margin, my answer to that is they might not know that much. They might have not been watching the games the last few years. To me, listen, I watch a lot of Florida. I watch a lot of Florida State. Both teams have been bad for the last couple of years. For some reason, Florida got an understandable pass after Tim Tebow left the program, and those sort of great years went by the wayside. Will Muschamp has received a pass thus far. Jimbo Fisher has been, not only has he received a pass, you'll still find a lot of Florida State fans saying he's actually doing a good job. And if you hear him talk, which I did, heard him give a couple of interviews over these last couple of days, ACC Media Days, nobody spits out more words in 1 minute than Jimbo Fisher. You think I talk a lot. If Jimbo Fisher were hosting this show, the word output would double. That man sounds just like he's selling a $500 used car. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I think a lot of the Florida State fan base has sort of fallen victim to this. And good for him. He's good at it. He's good at selling positivity. Good at, hey, we're back. We're coming back. We're back, man. We're coming back. That's about the way he talks. We'll see if they are back. I have serious doubts. I do think they're going to again be better than their rivals to the south, the Florida Gators, which to a lot of Florida State fans, that's all they really care about. But in terms of a team that deserves to be mentioned in the top 10 nationally or deserves to be a big favorite in the ACC, based on what? based on you have a lot of guys returning from a team that was anemic on offense and lost 4 games. Anyway, we'll see how it plays out. The other big news today in college football is obviously the continued fallout from the Penn State scandal. Bill O'Brien, newly hired Penn State head coach, broke his silence today. He stressed that his goal right now is keeping the current team together. What he's selling is that even though they won't be playing any bowls, the postseason ban, there's no TV ban for Penn State. And they, of course, have 108,000 that they'll play in front of every Saturday, assuming Beaver Stadium continues to be filled to capacity. Apparently, O'Brien's stressing to his players that they're going to be playing in front of 108,000. It's like 6 or 7 bowl games. We'll see if that goes over well. A lot of Penn State upperclassmen have come out and saying they will not leave. Senior linebacker Michael Mauti says, quote, every school in the country has contacted players on Penn State's football team, end quote. Every school in the country. So, I'm sure not literally every school in the country, but if you got a guy on the team saying that, you would think at least dozens of schools are contacting some of these players. USC, one of those schools, USC going after Penn State's best player, sophomore running back Silas Redd. Redd ran for over 1,200 yards last year. Sure, there'll be a lot of pressure on Silas Redd to stay, but if you put yourself in his position, should you stay? Is that what's in your best interest? I don't know. Already news today of one of Penn State's incoming recruits. Highly touted 4-star cornerback Ross Douglas. He's withdrawn from his letter of intent to Penn State, will now attend conference rival Michigan. I think we're going to see more of this over the coming days. I'm sure Penn State will keep a core of guys there together, but I'd have to believe they're going to lose a lot of guys too, and thus it begins. The sort of inevitable sinking to the bottom of the college football world, the Penn State football program. This is going to be a 9 or 10 loss team within a couple of years, and I believe they're going to stay that way for a decade or more, because at that point, how are you going to sell recruits, young kids, in 10 years coming to Penn State? Based on what? Our tradition? Our tradition? The child molester? The child molester who created our tradition? I'm not sure you're going to want to sell that tradition. So what will you have to sell Penn State football? I'm not sure. I know there's some good high school football in the state of Pennsylvania. Maybe they'll be able to slowly build it up through in-state kids over time. We'll see. Anyway, did want to mention something quickly. NBA free agency. Haven't talked, thank God, we haven't talked about Dwight Howard for about a week here on the show. For a while, there was a daily update on the Dwight Howard saga, where he would end up next. Well, now Rob Hennigan and the rest of the Orlando executives have apparently told rival executives around the league that they might not trade Dwight Howard after all. They might begin next season with Howard on the roster. Of course, he is under contract through next season. Might look to shop him around next February's trade deadline. Could you really do that if you're Orlando? The other guys on the team, the Magic fans, how do you get behind the team in the beginning of the year knowing they're trying to blow it up before the end of the season? Would Dwight Howard even try? Remember, he sat out the end of last year with a phantom back injury. Didn't even attend the team's losing playoff series against the Indiana Pacers. So, he's checked out of Orlando. Got to think this is just Rob Hennigan putting it out there in hopes that people will believe him and offer him a better deal. But anyway, did want to mention that. We are just about out of time now. Have enjoyed it today. Had a couple of laughs, which is always nice. Thank you again for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, 4 p.m. for more of the Social Gambler Radio Hour. For Pete Melfi, I'm John Arnette. Have a nice day, folks.